Welcome! My name is Sophie, and this is a speed paint of portraits of my lovely followers from Instagram. As you can see, I'm just splashing some colors on, vaguely resembling the person I'm painting. I think it's important to point out that I wasn't really going here for anything photorealistic. I was aiming for pieces that would look like I przemieliłam the photos I saw with my imagination and then put them on paper. I think it's good to know what I'm aiming for before starting a painting, even if it's just an exercise. And I don't really mean to create strict guidelines that I have to follow. Instead, I just like to have like a general idea of what I'm going for in a piece. By the way, I told my followers that they have to be aware that these are not going to be pretty portraits. I explicitly stated that they are going to be fairly ugly, I would say, because it wasn't the resemblance or the prettiness of a person I was going for. These portraits were meant to be fun and a wee bit experimental and generally self-indulgent because I just love drawing and painting faces all the time. And the reference photos, which of course were selfies of my followers, were meant to be viewed as a base for the paintings. I didn't want to create an exact copy of the photo, only give my brain a bit of food, if I can say that. That food could be a hint of what the composition should look like, or maybe an interesting expression, maybe the color of their garments. I would take that one thing and let it lead me through the process of painting. I think I've learned to do it because I tend to lose track of what I'm doing, especially when I'm painting for a few hours or something. My mind starts to wander off somewhere and suddenly the drawing I was working on looks, well, bad. And that is usually because 1, I didn't know what I was going for, and 2, I was focused on too many things at once. To be honest, I just find it a wee bit easier to concentrate when I just have like one thing on mind, especially in those periods of time when I don't feel very confident in my decisions when I paint. I'm curious to know if you do that as well, or maybe you just go with the flow and let the piece unravel in front of your eyes. So let's talk a bit about how I approached painting these guys, maybe in a more technical way. Instead of a sketch underneath, I started with a few blobs of paint straight away. And I don't think that you can call that sketching necessarily, because what I'm really doing here is already giving myself a pretty defined shape that I have to fill in with details later. And I really enjoy doing this. It's like going with the vibe the first few strokes give you, and then fitting in the rest of the picture into the mold. And because of its, I guess I can call it chaotic nature, this way of painting usually calls for doing things you usually don't do. I mean, I usually don't do. I constantly found myself going for less defined eyes because the whole picture looked way better with just a faint impression of eye sockets. Another thing would be I would just let the paint work itself and stop myself from refining every part of the picture because it just looked good already. These may not be huge changes in my workflow, but I always find at least one thing to take away from exercises like this. Also, the, pace of my work is more traditional. And what I mean to say is that I usually start with a broad idea of the subject, like a few blobs of paint, and then work my way towards defining that shape. And that means defining highlights and shadows, and then ending with small details. This helps me establish the tone of the whole picture and not get too lost with the small stuff in the beginning. But I actually think I would like to change it the next time round. For example, start with the eyes and then build the rest of the picture around them. By the way, I do this painting my followers thing every once in a while. So if you don't want to miss that, follow me over there. Overall, I'm proud of those tiny portraits, I would say. This is interesting, and this is always something that comes to me after I've already painted everything. I usually notice that the longer I paint, I usually get a bit less free. What I mean by that, I usually start being more focused on getting the realism right. This is, I would say, a default mindset when I sit down to draw or paint, which, well, might be fine sometimes, but I usually like to do things that are more, I don't know, imaginative, that use more of my imagination in the process of painting. I think it's one of the, I wouldn't say downsides, but it's definitely something that I got from being in an art school for a long time and being taught very traditionally. Maybe there are some of you who went to art schools or took art classes. The traditional way of learning to do art is usually based on rendition of realness. So this is editing, Sophie. I think it's just very refreshing for me. It's like I'm taking all that knowledge I have because of those years of studying the traditional way and just putting it to good use. And actually, I've been doing it only for maybe 2 or 3 years, I believe. Yeah, this is a new thing for me. And I still like academic way of drawing and painting, and I think it's a great thing. It's just that it's very fun to be finally able to use what I've learned and have fun while doing something a little bit different and something that is reflecting who I am, really. I think I would actually like to do a video on maybe pros and cons of learning the traditional way. I'm one of those people that believes that a good base, like a good traditional base, is great. But I don't think that everyone should study art traditionally or take courses that are primarily teaching you how to approach art in an academic way. So yeah, I think it would be great to do a video on this with both people who have had academic training and people who perhaps do the same thing like illustration but are self-taught. I think it would be great to know the opinion on both sides. This is me just rambling about stuff, but nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed watching this speed paint and you will enjoy watching it till the end, maybe. As I said, I do this painting my followers thing every once in a while, and if you don't want to miss the announcement, I always put it in my stories, so keep an eye on them. Yeah, I think that's it for the voiceover because my English is saying no. So for the rest of this video, please enjoy some gorgeous classical music that is always linked in the description below. And don't forget to tell me if you enjoyed this video and maybe give it a like. There's a lot of good stuff coming, like all of my sketchbooks unraveled. So yeah, make sure to stick around and see you next time. Bye!